It's Friday, October 23rd, 2015, and today the UFC announced that former UFC light heavyweight champion Jon Jones had been reinstated. You'll recall back in late April, he had his title stripped and was indefinitely suspended following a hit-and-run incident in Albuquerque, New Mexico. That legal matter has been largely settled, and now we are dealing with his return to the Octagon. But it's kind of interesting in terms of fan reaction, what has happened on Friday now that this has all been made official. When the news broke, the UFC also put out a statement essentially saying that Jon understands that he's basically on thin ice. Those are not the words that they used, but that's the message that they conveyed. Jones also put out a statement saying that this marks a new chapter in his life, that he has been humbled by almost losing everything, that he's really eager to show that there's the best is yet to come, and that he is basically a changed person. If all of that is true, that's fine. But what's sort of interesting is that there's a couple things going on here, both from what he is saying and what fans are reacting to, that doesn't quite make a lot of sense or should be examined a little bit further. There's been some interesting reactions, though, from some of the fans out there just to start this off. Notably, I've seen a lot of, well, I hope Jon has learned his lesson. I don't even know what that is supposed to mean. He didn't have to learn a lesson. This is not something so simplistic where you can say, well, this is a hot coil on a stove, don't touch it if you don't want to get burned. We're talking about a much more complex issue here. Jon has had to reform his entire worldview about his place in society, about what it means to treat others the way they're supposed to be treated, about what it means to be a contributing member of his community. That's not learning a lesson. That is entirely changing the way you view yourself, your place in the world, and the world generally. And him simply stating that he has every intention of turning things around and this is a new chapter, it may well be, but some PR message does not convey that, nor does talking about what he had to do as a lesson being learned in any way really examine the problem. In fact, what it does is actually contribute further to the problem. Because when you talk about it, did he learn his lesson? You are contributing to the theater of the absurd. You are not actually examining whether or not he has made a real turnaround with real evidence. You are talking about the theater that we, the media, and the fans as well, put on athletes to make them conform to some idea of what we want them to be. We want them to do a song and dance for us. We want them to say all the right things. We want them to be a Boy Scout. I don't care, really, if Jon Jones is or isn't a Boy Scout, and frankly, it's none of my business. The only thing I can reasonably ask of him and anyone else and everyone else of me is to be a law-abiding citizen, to not be a threat to yourself or those around you. And short of that, Jon is going to live his life the way he's going to live his life. This is sort of the other critical component here. People keep thinking that this public pressure is going to change things for Jon Jones. People keep saying all these bad things that have happened to him are going to change Jon Jones. And they might. They absolutely might. But only if Jon wants them to change. All the pressure externally in the world, all the fans asking for the song and dance, all the media asking for the song and dance, it doesn't mean anything unless he wants it to mean something. That's the fundamental disconnect here. People keep saying, well, I want my athletes to be of a certain character, which is understandable. Of course, you always want to have somebody you root for to be a good person. But the reality of life is that if you make economic decisions, I'm not going to buy a Jon Jones pay-per-view. I'm not going to buy a Jon Jones Reebok kit. I'm not going to buy tickets to go see him compete. You're still not putting the requisite pressure on him to get him to change if he doesn't want to change. You're only putting pressure on him to do the public song and dance, the very thing he's really not all that good at. The fact is, Jon Jones is going to be who he's going to be. And yes, of course, it would obviously be better if he really did make a turnaround, if he really truly was humbled by this. It's always easier to root for the good guys than it is the bad guys. And we don't want to see him get into trouble. He has special gifts and special ability, and he has already treated us to a glimpse of that. At 28 years old, he's got a lot left to give. But I'll tell you that one thing I'm not prepared to do, and I really hope that others are willing to get on board with this. I am not prepared to pour over the minutia of his PR releases. I am not prepared to force him to say things that make it seem like he's just a G. Willikers, Mr. Rogers good person. I'm not going to force him to be something he's not going to be, because either he wants to at this point or he doesn't. And I don't think you have to root for a person you don't like. I don't think you have to cheer for a person that you may want to or not want to cheer for. You have total discretion in being a fan and who you like and who you don't. That is absolutely okay. There is nothing wrong with that. But as a member of the media, I am not doing it anymore. Jon Jones is 28 years old. If he has not decided who he wants to be by now, after everything he's been through, there is nothing that me asking him is going to be. I'm not going to praise someone for a PR release, and I'm not going to condemn them for saying something that people view as fake either. They are who they are, and when we ask athletes like Jon Jones, who are incredible forces of nature, but maybe not so gifted at doing the public song and dance that we put them through, you get a bizarre result. If you want to ask him to not be a menace to society, to not be a danger to his community or his loved ones or anything else, that is certainly okay. But anything more than that, it's not my business how he is to his friends and family. It's not my business how he handles his business outside of the octagon. That is his life to manage. You don't have to get on board with it, but what you really need to realize, and it's something I'm going to do, you can't change it. We need to stop asking all athletes, but particularly someone like Jon Jones, to be something that maybe he is or he isn't. So I don't know who he is after what happened with this whole incident. Maybe he completely has totally turned things around. Maybe he realizes everything that he was doing, at a basic level is inadvisable, or maybe he hasn't. That's the way this goes. This is a cold world, and some people get a clue about things and turning them around, and some don't. And the magnitude of them to you may not matter to them. We can't make him be something he is not. He is going to be maybe a good guy, maybe a bad guy, but I'm just not going to ask him to be something other than what he is anymore. You can cheer for that, you can boo that, that's totally okay. But let's stop putting pressure on Jon Jones or any other athlete to own up to our theater of melodrama, our give us, Jon Jones, that sorrow act that we need. Show us those tears. Make us believe. I don't need to be made to believe anything. I just would like to see, if possible, if he can stay out of trouble and turn in the magical performances in the octagon that we are accustomed to seeing. Or maybe he can't. But one way or the other, the only person in this world who will decide what outcome we see is Jon Jones.